How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? We have reached Wednesday yet again, and I feel like I don't even have to say it anymore at this point because every Wednesday we discuss your Bulls hot takes, and we've got some good ones for you this week. So without further ado, let's get into it. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, real quick before I get into the video, there's been a lot of debate recently on NBA Twitter, and really, this has been the case for a while now, always an ongoing debate on who the greatest player of all time is. And more recently, people have been reacting to who Cade Cunningham selected as the GOAT, which he chose LeBron James, which I'll be honest, I could really care less what Cade Cunningham thinks when it comes to assessing who the greatest player of all time is, but be that as it may, I wanted to do a quick plug because I made a video a couple months back on who I think are the 5 greatest players of all time, and since we have a lot of new subscribers, I figured I would reshare this video again. I'll leave it linked in the description as well as in the upper right hand corner here because I'm genuinely curious what you guys think are the top 5 players of all time. I love these type of debates. Let me know in the comments of that video who you think is the top 5 players of all time in the NBA. But anyway, I know that was a bit off topic and I know I just contradicted myself because I just said without further ado, let's get into the takes. But now for real, let's get into this week's hot takes. And to kick us off with our first take from Miro Kusa Proshki, which this take is from the Hot Takes channel on the Discord. If Zion joins Bulls, Bulls will win the championship next year. Well, let me just first start by saying there is no way Zion is joining the Bulls this upcoming season. Look, I know everyone is talking about the photo of him and Zach Lavine together in LA, which I believe they were doing a promotion of some kind together. This kind of thing literally happens all the time between players, but it really doesn't mean anything. I'm sure like every player they might do a little recruiting here and there, but the Pelicans are absolutely not giving up on Zion. And even if Zion demanded a trade, which isn't out of their own possibility, especially after the Pelicans had a very underwhelming offseason, and if the Pelicans perform poorly yet again this season, it's possible you could see a disgruntled Zion not wanting to waste his generational talent and early years in the NBA on a poor NBA team. But then you're talking about the Pelicans asking for a major haul for a young talent in Zion Williamson, which the Bulls do not have the assets to trade for. They don't have draft picks. They could trade some of their core that they just acquired in DeRozan and Vucevic, but I can't see the Pelicans going for that because they're going to want younger players if they're going to be trading Zion. So yes, it's fun and exciting to talk about the potential of the Bulls adding Zion and that Lavine is recruiting Zion, but it's not going to happen this season. Now, if Zion doesn't sign an extension from his rookie deal with the Pelicans and becomes a free agent in the next couple of seasons, that could be a different story, but even then, the Bulls have to do some salary cap magic to make it work. All of that being said, I didn't answer your actual take, so let's say that the Bulls do in fact add Zion Williamson to the roster somehow, that they would then win the championship in this upcoming season. I don't know about winning a championship, but they would definitely be a title contending team and right up there in the mix if you added a young talent in Zion to this roster. Next up, we've got Malik JC. Patrick Williams will end up being Luol Deng 2.0. Multiple all-star selections, lockdown defense, 15 and 19 points per game for most of his best years. So initially when I saw this, I started reading it and I was like, nah, this is a straight up disrespectful take to Patrick Williams to say that he's Luol Deng 2.0, which I do disagree with, and I'll explain why. But when I thought about it more, it's not a terrible thing to say that he could be Luol Deng 2.0. You know, as you mentioned, Deng was a 2-time All-Star, an incredible defender, really a great two-way player because he was solid on offense, generally averaging around 16 points per game to go along with his lockdown defense. So yeah, you know, we forget that Deng was a really good player for this Bulls team. Now, I personally think Patrick will ultimately be a better player than Luol Deng. At least we all hope he does anyway, because there have been a lot of expectations of him after we selected him with the 4th pick, and we saw a lot of potential there in his rookie season. But even if Williams does just become Deng 2.0, to go alongside the star talent the Bulls currently have, that's really not a bad fit at all. Next up, we've got KG. The biggest leap this year will be from Coby White, not Patrick Williams, although P. will improve, just not as significantly as Coby. Interesting take, because I think so many of us have just slowly forgotten about Coby White, because we know that he's injured and will likely have to miss the start of the season anyway, and with Lonzo Ball coming in, all of the attention and focus has been on him as the Bulls starting point guard. On top of that, when you think of guys making the biggest leap from this past season, Patrick Williams is usually the answer. Everyone expects this to be the year where he makes a significant jump now going into his second season, having a full off season in front of him and with a summer league. And even aside, from Patrick Williams, some people expect that Lonzo will have the biggest leap from his previous season. So to say Coby White will actually be the better player with the biggest jump from last year is definitely an unpopular opinion, which is what makes it a hot take. So I like it. I can't say I agree with it because I have a hard time seeing Coby taking a big leap from last year when we know that his minutes are going to be reduced, mainly because he's going to lose his starting role to Lonzo Ball. Not only that, but the Bulls also brought in Alex Caruso and drafted the combo guard Dosunmu. So you're talking about a lot of minutes that are going to need to be shared between all of these guards. We also have to assume that Coby could potentially miss up to for the first 2 months of the season with his shoulder injury. Now, he could be back earlier, but the longest projection is that he would be out for 6 months from the time of the injury, which would put his return around December. So with those factors in mind, I think it's hard to see how Coby would be the one that would actually make the biggest jump from one season to the next on this team. Next up, we've got Immortal Goofy. Our defense will be much stronger than people expect, led by Lonzo, Pat, and an improved Lavine. Our bench defense of Caruso, Ayo, Troy Brown Jr., Bradley, and Marco will be electric. I further believe we will trade Lauri for more front court defense. So this is the take that I have the biggest issue with in the media and their downplaying and hating of the Bulls, because you hear so much from these quote-unquote experts that the Bulls aren't going to be good because they're going to be horrible on defense. It clearly shows their lack of knowledge about this roster and the role players in the league, and are only focused on big names because that's what draws the most attention from these big media companies. Which, if you look at the Bulls, their 3 best players in Lavine, DeRozan, and Vucevic, not the best defenders. So if you don't really know the ins and outs of every single team and who's actually on the team, as you probably should if you're getting paid to do this professionally, you're just going to look at the top names and immediately write this team off as a bad defensive team. But no, on the contrary, this team actually has a solid roster with quality defensive players. Again, I'm not saying the Bulls are going to be one of the best defensive teams in the league, but they're going to not be horrible by any means, and it's because of all the guys you just mentioned. You have very strong defenders in the starting lineup in Lonzo Ball and Patrick Williams. You have very underrated defenders in Caruso, Troy Brown Jr., and Tony Bradley in the second unit. Not to mention the fact that Ayo is a very capable defender that he showed in his college years as well as in summer league. And you're right, I do think Lavine will show some improvement on the defensive end like we saw from him in the Olympics. Now, Marko Simonovic, I can't say I agree there. He isn't really known for his defense, and his defense looked pretty suspect in summer league, but who knows? Maybe he'll continue to work on that and get better as the season progresses. So I like this take. I mean it in the sense that I appreciate it because I do think that the Bulls defense is going to be underrated. I'm not saying that it's going to be stellar, but people are way downplaying this defense because they're solely focusing on the big 3 in Zach Lavine, Nikola Vucevic, and DeMar DeRozan, who aren't known defenders. Next, we've got the 10 ways the Bulls will have at least one quarter this season where they shoot 100% from the field. So I probably should have looked at this number before recording this, but wanted to get this out as soon as I could. But I'm pretty sure in the history of the NBA, no team has ever shot 100% from the field in a given quarter. It's just so incredibly difficult to do. I know some teams have shot 100% from 3 in a given quarter, but that's because threes are taken much less often. But from the field, a team to not miss an entire shot for a whole 12 minutes, that just doesn't happen. So no, the Bulls won't be able to pull that off. I get where you're going with this in the sense that, this Bulls team is going to be an incredible team on offense, and they've got 3 very efficient scorers, but 100% from the field is just not practical. Next up, we've got Taco Devil. 3 Bulls will make the All-Star game this upcoming season at worst. So I actually received some questions on this in my Bulls mailbag video on Monday, and I'll kind of reiterate what I said there. But for the Bulls to get at least 3 All-Stars, and presumably you're talking about Lavine, Vucevic, and DeRozan, the Bulls would really have to be the 1 or 2 seed in the East heading into the All-Star break to make this a reality for all 3 of them to actually be selected. I would say, realistically speaking, you're probably talking about 2 All-Stars max for the Bulls. And again, that's if they can at least be a top 5 team in the East heading into All-Star weekend. I think Lavine will definitely be one of them, and then one of Vucevic or DeRozan, depending on, who actually is more impactful for the team's overall success. Next up, we've got Chatbox. The Bulls trade Coby White, Lauri Markkanen, and a second-round pick for Robert Covington and a first. Interesting trade proposal. I actually do like this one, and I know a lot of people have talked about trade scenarios involving Covington just because he's a really good defender. He's a versatile player with his ability to play the 3, 4, or 5, so he gives the Bulls needed front court defense and versatility. Covington's production has dipped quite a bit, at least in his time in Portland. He only averaged 8.5 points per game, but at the same time, with the amount of offense the Bulls will have, we're not going to need his offensive production, and he can focus on being a defensive specialist off the bench. Also, I didn't realize, but Covington actually started every game he played on last season with the Blazers. The other good thing about this trade is that Covington will be on an expiring contract next season, getting paid $12.9 million. The only thing I don't like about this trade is giving up on Coby White. Just because, and I've said this before, it's hard to give up on a young player like Coby that has shown a lot of potential. Only 21, going into his third year in the league, but you also added in a first-round pick into the package, which I really don't think you could pass up in this scenario, even if it means the Bulls have to send Portland a second-round pick, Coby, and Lauri Markkanen. All that being said, I'm not sure if Portland would take this trade, though, because yes, they do get 2 young players in Markkanen and Coby in exchange for Covington, who is older. He's 30 years old and on an expiring deal, but at the same time, they're likely going to want to hold on to their future first picks in the event they blow this team up and start rebuilding, which is definitely a possibility if Damian Lillard demands a trade. Let's do one more, and this one comes to us from Isaac Howard. Bulls will have a top 12 offense and defense this year and will make at least they'll make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So the Bulls being a top 5-12 offensive team. Yeah, I think there's no question that will happen. Now, it depends on whether you're looking at offense based solely on points per game versus, say, net offensive rating or even defensive rating for that matter compared to points allowed. Net ratings, they do factor in a host of things and components, but there are also a lot of assumptions in some of the advanced metrics which don't sometimes translate well into actually showing up in the game in what is being done on offense and on defense. But if we're looking purely at points per game and points allowed when measuring offense and defense, last year the Bulls finished 21st in the league on offense for points per game and 24th in the league in points allowed. Like I said, top 12 I think is a no-brainer in terms of offense. With the level of talent that the Bulls have on offense, with 3 players who are elite level scorers who can average over 20 points per game, you're going to get a highly skilled offensive team. Defense, on the other hand, again, I don't think Bulls are going to be terrible on defense like the media is predicting them to be, like I talked about just a little bit ago, but they will still have their struggles on defense and the fact that their 3 best players aren't known for their defense. But as I mentioned, people are still underestimating this team in terms of their defensive prowess. Do I think that they'll be a top 12 team in the league in defense? Maybe. I think they'll likely be more in the 13 to 15 range, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were one of the 12 best teams in the league on defense. As for your last point in the Bulls making to the Eastern Conference Finals, I mean, look, I said it in my interview with Matt Peck that I think this Bulls team, their ceiling is making the Eastern Conference Finals. And again, that's their max ceiling. Eastern Conference Finals, in my view, is still a bit of a stretch. I think realistically, the Bulls can make it to the second round, with the talent that they have and the competition in the East. And that would actually be a very successful season for this team. If they're able to get that done in their first year with Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan being added, I would be very happy if the Bulls were able to make a second round playoff run. I'll end it there for this week though, guys. Feel free to leave your hot takes in the comments below to be included in next week's hot takes video. As always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.